Jeff Bezos didn't just build a trillion-dollar empire, he built it on a foundation of really powerful psychological strategies. And these aren't just business tactics you'd read in a textbook. Nope, they're a blueprint for a mindset. A mindset that's all about experimentation, obsessive customer focus, and making really bold decisions. So, let's dive into the 7 core principles of this builder's guide. It all starts with this stark warning from one of Bezos' shareholder letters. And yeah, it's harsh for sure, but it's also psychologically brilliant. This quote sets up the high-stakes game he believes every business, and really every person, is playing against complacency. It's the core tension that fuels literally everything else we're about to talk about. So, to really get this blueprint, we're going to break it down into 4 parts. We'll start with a foundational mindset. What drives the behavior? Then we'll move to the strategy for action, explore the culture of ownership that keeps it all going, and finally, look at how you can actually put these ideas to work for yourself. All right, let's start with the internal beliefs. You can think of these as the operating system for every single decision that comes after. This one is probably Bezos' most famous principle of all, the day one mindset. Psychologically, what this is a forced reset. It's a daily commitment to avoid that comfortable complacency that success so often brings. It's all about treating every single day like it's the very first day of your most important project. The real power of this idea comes from the contrast. Day 1 is all about that startup energy, right? Constant experimentation, being agile. Day 2? Well, day 2 is the trap. It's where success leads to stasis, where following a process becomes more important than getting results, and where bureaucracy just slowly grinds everything to a halt, leading, inevitably, to decline. Psychologically, this mindset is a direct weapon against what's called status quo bias. Our natural human tendency to just stick with what's comfortable. By hitting reset to day 1 every single morning, you're building resilience and curiosity. And at Amazon, this isn't just some motivational poster on a wall. It's operationalized with things like their famous 2 pizza teams, small autonomous groups that can move incredibly fast. And the results? They speak for themselves. Sustained innovation from AWS to the Kindle. Okay, so with that mindset in place, let's look at how it actually translates into a strategy for action, the principles that guide how things actually get built. The second principle is an absolute obsession with the customer. Now, this is so crucial. It's not about obsessing over your competitors. It's about starting with what the customer needs and working backwards from there. Leaders, in this view, have to work tirelessly to earn and keep that customer trust above absolutely everything else. And this philosophy? It leads to very real outcomes. Get this, about 90% of the features built for Amazon Web Services come directly from customer feedback. Bezos calls customers divinely discontent, which basically means that yesterday's wow is just today's ordinary. That belief is what pushed Amazon from being a simple online bookstore to the everything store. And ultimately, this approach helps you sidestep your own ego and forces you to solve real, actual problems. Next up, long-term thinking. While so much of the world is chasing quarterly results, Bezos has always played the long game. He believes that true ownership means you have to plant seeds today for a forest that might only mature years from now. You just don't sacrifice long-term value for a short-term win. I mean, just look at this timeline. In the early years, Amazon offered free shipping and price cuts that absolutely crushed their profits, but it locked in customer habits. Later on, they poured billions into AWS, a project that wouldn't show a major payoff for years. This way of thinking is a direct counter to our own psychological present bias, our desire for that immediate gratification. Bezos is famous for saying that whenever Amazon has a good quarter, it's because of the hard work they did 3, 4, or even 5 years ago. This brings us to a really, really powerful idea: embracing experimentation and failure. Now, this isn't about being careless. It's about understanding that if you aren't failing, you aren't innovating. The goal is to maximize the number of experiments you can run so you can accelerate your learning. Bezos himself puts it this way, and it's a core part of the culture. He makes a big distinction between good experimental failure and bad operational failure. A glitch in the supply chain? That's bad. A bold new product that doesn't quite work out but provides a ton of valuable lessons? Well, that's good. The perfect example is the Fire Phone. It was a massive public flop, But the learnings from that failure directly inform the development of one of their biggest successes ever, the Amazon Echo and Alexa. The rule of thumb here is all about speed. You make reversible decisions, what Bezos calls two-way doors, quickly with only about 70% of the information you wish you had. But how in the world do you create an environment where all this can actually happen? That brings us to our third set of principles, which focus on the culture of ownership and the rules for leading. First, Bezos completely rejects the idea of work-life balance. He actually calls it a debilitating phrase. See, he doesn't see it as a scale where if one side wins, the other has to lose. Instead, he pushes for work-life harmony. He views it as a circle. If you're happy and energized at home, you bring that awesome energy to work. And if you're happy and fulfilled at work, you bring that energy back home. This isn't some soft, fuzzy concept. It's a strategic advantage. Prioritizing things like getting 8 hours of sleep isn't about being lazy. It's about being able to make high-quality decisions. Of course, none of this works without a really specific style of leadership that's designed to foster innovation. It's all about creating an environment of deep thinking, healthy debate, and what's called psychological safety. So here are the tactics. Amazon famously banned PowerPoint. Instead, they use 6-page narrative memos that everyone reads in silence at the start of meetings. It forces deep thought. Leaders are expected to have a backbone and challenge ideas respectfully, but then, and this is key, commit wholly once a decision is made. And they build trust by being vocally self-critical. It creates a space where it actually feels safe to take risks. And this all ties back to the final, unifying principle, ownership. It's a simple but incredibly profound idea that shifts the entire psychology of a team. An owner's perspective goes way beyond their own department. They feel responsible for the success of the entire company. The fundamental distinction here is between owners and tenants. Tenants think short-term. They protect their little silo. Owners, on the other hand, think long-term, for the good of the whole enterprise. They're willing to put up with short-term pain for that long-term gain, because they feel this deep sense of responsibility for the outcome. So, those are the 7 core principles of the builder's blueprint. But, knowing them is one thing, actually applying them is another. Let's talk about your first step. Start small. Seriously, don't try to do all 7 at once. Just pick one principle that really resonates with you. Maybe it's that day 1 mindset. Try journaling 3 small experiments you could run this week. Or maybe it's customer obsession. Go ask a customer in your life, like your boss or a client, for some direct feedback. Or maybe it's ownership. Say yes to that stretch assignment you've been kind of avoiding. The real power of these principles comes from consistent application. They are psychological tools for building a more resilient, innovative, and impactful life. So the only question left is, which one will you start with today?